Hello there. This is not usually how I begin the Dynasty Roundtable podcast, but the beginning of the recording that we recorded got cut off. So this is me welcoming you to the Dynasty Roundtable podcast, where tonight we cover the fallout from the NFL trade deadline. We hope you enjoy. Without further ado, here is the episode. And today, I think it was called the NFL trade deadline. And it started with a bang, man. I mean, we got Sauce Gardner right off the bat. And then Jerry Jones made another dumbass trade. And then, some other stuff happened. And then I was getting real excited, Matt. I was getting real excited for Breece Hall because the Jets are making all these trades, right? The Jets are wheeling and dealing. And Breece Hall is an unrestricted free agent in 2026. And I thought for sure some team would trade a third-round pick to get Breece Hall, and then the Jets do what the Jets do. And I equated it to a dynasty team just shipping off all their elite assets, in exchange for just picks, which is kind of what happened. I mean, they got some other pieces back, and we'll talk about it that, could be helpful. But, man, I really thought that this was going to be a signal that Breece Hall was going to get dealt to a better situation. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm bummed out. Because I have a lot of Breece Hall, and I was hoping he'd go to the Texans or Chiefs or some other destination. And I don't know. I'm kind of pissed at the Jets right now. I'm not going to lie to you. But how are you feeling and thinking, or what are your thoughts here on the post NFL trade deadline? This is what we're going to do tonight. We're going to do a little dynasty assessment, buy, sell, hold, if you want to call it that, of all these players that were affected by the NFL trade deadline. So anyway, how you doing? How you feeling? What's going on?
Feeling great. I think I talked about the frozen frenzy last week. NHL. I don't know if I mentioned how much I had on the line there. We were up about 2 units.
Okay, so north or south of $1 million did you win, or
no? About $100.
$100. Okay,
but hey, that's nothing. I had to stop betting. For football, as much as I'm tuned in, the football NFL market is so sharp that it's just hard. So it's fun to have a sport that I can actually be somewhat successful in. But the football trade deadline was very interesting. I think some of the meta takeaways before we get into more of the fantasy specific players, and we'll talk about Breece Hall a little bit more, but I'm not necessarily as mad at the Jets for knowing what they have in a player. I am more mad at the teams that were too stingy, the contenders that were too stingy, the Kansas City Chiefs, for not paying a third-round pick. Personally, as a Tom Brady loyalist, fan of the legacy, Patrick Mahomes hater, I loved it because I wanted nothing. I wanted Breece Hall so far away from Kansas City because it just felt like, okay, cool. The Chiefs give up a late third-round pick for Breece Hall. They'll probably get one back in some sort of, compensatory pick either this year or next, and basically net even in that whole deal. And they go on and they become Super Bowl contenders again, maybe even Super Bowl favorites, because they unlock an entire new versatility of their game. But no, that did not happen. I was very shocked. I mean, they have not been able to run the ball at all. They're rolling out Kareem Hunt and Rashid Smith. I do think there's hope for Rashid Smith, at some point in his career. I liked him a lot as a prospect. But come on, let's be serious. The Super Bowl contenders trotting out Kareem Hunt and Rashid Smith as an RB duo. And based on the usage, even, it's kind of can't really even call it a duo. It was Kareem Hunt. It's gross. It's disgusting. Then secondly, the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys. They went, from, if you've ever watched Dumb and Dumber, there's that scene where he says, you go and do something stupid and then you totally redeem yourself. Well, the opposite of that would be completely humiliating yourself more. And that is what the Cowboys went out and did. They doubled down on the absolutely abhorrent trade for Micah Parsons. And if you're one of those people that goes on social media or in real life and talks about the cap space, I politely would like you to shut up, because there's not a lot of teams that think like that. in terms of valuing, cap space over a game-changing edge rusher. And the teams that think like that are all losers, like the Dallas Cowboys. Thankfully, hopefully my wife is far enough away to where she can't hear me pooping on her favorite team so much. But absolutely ridiculous if you look at the actual grand scheme of the Micah Parsons trade. This is from Greg Rosenthal. Cowboys essentially traded Micah and Mozzie Smith for Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, and a move up roughly 15 to 20 spots back of the first round of the 2026 draft. That is awful return for a player like Micah Parsons. And now they're paying 3 defensive tackles at least $20 million a year. And even before Quinnen Williams, they couldn't stop the damn run, Seth. Bam Knight ripped off an explosive 9-yard rush to kick off Monday Night Football yesterday. They make it look easy against that Cowboys defensive line. And they said, you know what, we need Quinnen Williams in this building. It's absurd. I don't get it. The Jets trading Sauce before we get into the fantasy relevant players, that was also interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the Cowboys? And then maybe we could talk a little bit about Sauce to Indy before we get into the fantasy guys.
Yeah, as always, I'm always baffled by what the Cowboys do. So I think you summed that up pretty well. I mean, Sauce Gardner, either it's, Chris Ballard recognizing, hey, our team's finally having a good year, a year where maybe we can make a push in the playoffs. And this is the kind of move you make when you think that you have a Super Bowl team and you just need the cherry on top of the sundae. So we'll see. I mean, the Colts seem to be a pretty well-constructed team. I did see an absurd tweet stating that Daniel Jones is an elite quarterback in the NFL. I wouldn't go as far to say that. He's not elite. He's good, okay to good at this point. He's surrounded by a good offensive line. He's got good weapons. So we're seeing what a quarterback like Daniel Jones, and we're seeing it in Seattle with Sam Darnold as well. It's amazing. A quarterback thrives in a good situation when you surround them with good pieces and a good head coach. It's incredible how that works. So that one I thought was an overpay. I personally am not a fan of paying 2 first-round picks for a corner, even a corner as good as Sauce Gardner. But if that's the piece you think you need to win a Super Bowl, I don't know, man. I mean, go for it, I guess. I mean, I love the aggressiveness. I both love it and hate it at the same time is what I'm trying to say. From a value perspective, I hate it, but, God damn it, don't I respect it kind of deal. So getting back to the Arizona Cardinals, I guess we'll start here with the Dallas Cowboys, and we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals here in a minute. Do they know that they're 3-5? Do they have any 3-5-1? I guess they're 3-5-1. They are just a tie ahead of the Washington Commanders, who were rumored to be sellers at the trade deadline. With Jaden Daniels out, maybe they trade away Debo or something, but that didn't happen, obviously. And I just don't get it, man. I think you summed it up really well. They can't stop the run. They gave up 5.6 yards per carry to Emari DeMercado last week. They did do better against the run, but again, they did better against DeMercado and Bam Knight at running back. So, and they give up, but they're like one of the only teams to give up a receiving touchdown to Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. So, yeah, I don't get it, and I think that some teams are just going to do what you think they're going to do. And the Cowboys, that's what they do, man. They're going to be stuck in mediocrity as long as Jerry Jones is making decisions like this. And I think it leads us into the fantasy relevant topics here. But I want to start with a couple of players who weren't traded, because I think while it's interesting to talk about who is traded and how it affects those offensive environments, and we'll get to that, I think the more interesting piece is not even a trade. I'm so obsessed with this Kyler Murray story for a couple of reasons. you can't tell me that Jakobi Brissett is more talented than him, but it's very obvious that the offense works better with Jakobi Brissett behind center. And it's the same reason I've been lukewarm on Kyler Murray this entire time. I really didn't know what to do with him in our latest Dynasty rankings. I mean, he's got to fall. And if I can sell him for whatever, I think I'm willing to do it. Although I don't have any Kyler Murray because I already sold him a long time ago. But I'm more fascinated in this because, and it's like we're in a space where it's really tough to question a player's work ethic, but it kind of seems like Kyler Murray doesn't really, let's just say, I don't know if he's staying late and grinding film. You know what I mean? I have no idea. This is just the body language that I see on Sundays and that I've seen for a long time. Like it's not great with Kyler Murray. It doesn't look to me that he's in love with the game of football. Again, he'd probably tell me to F off right to my face if he were here. And I'd say it right to him if he were here. I'd be like, I don't think you, dude, what the hell? Like, you don't look like you like the game of football. Like, you don't look like you're having fun. And granted, you do play for the Arizona Cardinals, but come on, dude. And so this soft benching with this foot issue, I mean, the injury is a good excuse, I suppose, to get Jakobi Brissett in there, but we're talking 4 to 8 weeks now. So, I mean, he's complete, like, you're talking 8 weeks, like up to through the fantasy playoffs now, if it's 8 weeks. So I guess if you're a contender, you're looking to trade him for what you can get for him. Maybe a usable RB2, RB3, maybe a usable wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, somewhere in there. I mean, this is bizarre. Like, he's still, and I know keep trade cuts slow to react, but it's the best thing that we have to look at. He's still hovering around quarterback 24, 93 overall. He's gonna fall. He's gonna drop. So it's tough to really say right now what you could get for him. But just, I mean, this is, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this, to be honest with you. I mean, am I crazy? Like, is there any other quarterback that you can think of that, Jay Cutler in Chicago got criticized for acting like he didn't care, but Jay Cutler was an immensely talented player. Like, Jay Cutler was way more talented, in my opinion, than Kyler Murray, just from a throwing the football standpoint. Not mobile, obviously, but Jay Cutler had a hose on it, man. Like, so
that's the exact thing that I was going to bring up was Jay Cutler. And I never understood that. Like, the smoking Jay, like, those memes were funny, but then you had like he didn't care, but he's coming out of the huddle saying, tell Mars I said F you.
Yeah.
And like he very clearly cared. Like, that's, you saw like in his tenacity, like the way he approached the game. He was a competitor, and maybe he didn't care for the Bears coaching staff at the time, which is probably very true. He expressed that through his actions, and who can blame him?
He wasn't the nicest guy. He never was.
He came to win.
The problem, Matt, is he has a very punchable face. Jay Cutler, like, he has just that face that you go, ugh. Like,
he was disrespected,
I mean?
From a talent level and questioning the care for the game. I never got it. That was back when my dad still watched Bears games, so I watched every Jay Cutler game. I saw him play, and the demeanor was off at times, but fourth quarter, they're down. Like, he's going to be the one, getting after guys and being that leader. And you just don't see that same fight with Kyler. And so I understand that, it is hard for us to be here and sit here in front of our TV screens and tell you that Kyler Murray doesn't care, but it's just what we're seeing with the actions. Like, Bryce Young isn't the best quarterback, but you can tell by the way they go after it that he cares about the game. And there are other quarterbacks that struggle but show that passion, and then it just never, like the times where Marvin Harrison Jr. was struggling and you see them on two separate benches, after the drive ends. Kyler's like, it seems like he's always sitting by himself. When you see players picking people up on the sidelines, it always seems to be other people involved and not Kyler. When Marv finally cut that touchdown, he dropped his head to the ground. You could tell how much it meant to him. And Kyler's walking off the field while everyone else is running up to him and congratulating him, saying, like, this is who you are. Like, you are good. Like, shake this rust off. And Kyler's walking over to the bench. It's not a good look. And it's not a coincidence that his offense has looked better with him off the field. With no run game, really. They don't have James Conner. They don't have Trey Benson. They're making it work. He's making Marv look like the best he's seen for a lot of last season and for this season. Trey McBride is good at finding the end zone with a good quarterback. So we're ticking up all of our Cardinals as well. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, becomes a buy. And Trey McBride, I mean, price is a little high, but you're certainly not looking to sell him like you may have been thinking about with how things were turning out with Kyler Murray. So bump to all Cardinals and agreed that, if you're a contender with Kyler Murray, you got to just kind of trade him away. And if you're not a contender with Kyler Murray, you kind of got to wait this out because, I mean, you just got to hope the worst case scenario doesn't happen, which is literally, benched, not a Cardinal anymore, not a starter, and then just kind of fades off into the distance. But if you're a Kyler Murray owner, you probably should have had Jakobi Brissett picked up, as he wasn't really a highly rostered quarterback. So hopefully you got that value too of being able to get the starter in Arizona still.
Yeah, and honestly, it looks to me like Jakobi Brissett's going to be the guy going forward. So I agree with you, a slight bump to all the Arizona pass catchers. And I'll just throw this out there too. I think Trey Benson is still a buy in Dynasty. I know he's hurt right now, but if you're looking forward to, like, if you're a contender and you need depth, I think that's a cheap piece you can go out and get. And if you're playing the matchups, they have a decently hard schedule down the stretch, and their fantasy playoff schedule on the surface is pretty tough. It's Texans, Falcons, but then in week 17, they get the Bengals. So if Trey Benson is healthy, that week 17 matchup looks really juicy, if he's healthy by then. So I would just throw that out there too. But yeah, it's one of the more bizarre situations that I can think of. And I'm not really trying to pile on Kyler Murray because I think this is just the same stuff we've been saying for the past, year, 2 years? How long have we been doing this podcast? I feel like we've had the same feelings toward Kyler Murray this entire time. And so this soft benching or this injury or whatever you want to call it, it's of no surprise to me. And I don't think it's of any surprise to you. I just think it's fascinating because, if you look at his contract, and I'm pulling it up now, I know what it looks like. It's going to be very hard for them to get out of this, and I'm no contract expert, but he signed through 2028 where he has a club option. So the next couple of years, I mean, the dead cap hit next year is $57 million. And I suppose the Broncos proved to us that, hey, if we don't want Russell Wilson around, we'll just cut his ass and take the $80+ million cap hit. But so I suppose they could do that, but it gets a lot cleaner after 2026 and 2027, only a $7.2 million dead cap hit. And then after 2027, there's nothing guaranteed. So I think you could be seeing the end of Kyler Murray here sooner rather than later. So let's move on. Or first, any final thoughts there before we move on?
Nope.
All right. So we alluded to it earlier, but Breece Hall stays with the New York Jets. Every single other player on the Jets seemingly got traded today, except for Breece Hall. So this either means that the Jets have plans to keep him and extend him because he is an unrestricted free agent in 2026, which I'm not going to lie to you all, is not great for Breece Hall's value in Dynasty if he stays with the Jets. Or it means that teams were cheap or the Jets were asking for too much or whatever the case might be. But for the short term, I don't think it changes much for Breece Hall. I still think he's a hold. I think he's an immensely undervalued, talented player stuck with an organization and an offense that is just not very good. And It's unfortunate, but I think it's true. I think he does have some value, but unfortunately, he is going to be playing, it looks like, some of the rest of this year for sure. And honestly, it's tough to project past that because, like we said, he is an unrestricted free agent. But man, I don't think that this was very smart for the Jets to not trade him. I mean, right now he's ranked right behind Marvin Harrison Jr., right ahead of Josh Jacobs at player 48 overall, according to Keep Trade Cut. Like I said, I'm holding him for now, and I really would like to see how next year plays out. But man, if you're a contender, I'm not sure what you're going to get from Breece Hall down the stretch. I know that they're going to be in some shootouts, and like he's a pass catching running back, so maybe he can catch some dump offs and get some points in a PPR league that way. But I don't really have any confidence in this Jets offense. So I mean, what are your thoughts here? This was like the most disappointed. This was my I was immensely disappointed that Breece Hall was not traded today because I thought for sure when all these Jets trades are going down, I thought for sure Breece Hall was going to get traded.
Yeah. It's interesting because you would think that they should get rid of him. It is hard to kind of accept getting a 4th round pick for Breece Hall when you think about the talent. They could very well trade him for a 3rd, after, during the off season. So it's not necessarily over in terms of getting Breece Hall out of New York. It could be, only contenders in the current state were looking to buy, and the market was, so in favor of the demand. There's such low demand that the teams like the Chiefs can say, hey, we're just going to give you a 4th round pick. So I don't know. It's tough for Breece. This team's going to be bad next year. They're going to be bad the year after that. We've seen, though, in the past, if we get a coaching staff that is dedicated to getting Breece Hall the ball and they have a relatively functional offensive line, that Breece Hall can produce. It's just we haven't seen that for a while, and it becomes, we get further and further away from those Breece Hall RB1 days. So right now, if you're a contender, potentially looking to sell. If you're not a contender, a hold right now just because his dynasty value was certainly better when there was trade prospects going around. I saw people thinking that he would go to New England, which would have been crazy. But that obviously didn't happen either.
Yeah, I saw those rumors that New England was interested in a running back.
Didn't make any sense to me. I even said that I didn't think it was going to happen.
No, it didn't make any sense. And then I just wondered too, if you're interested in a running back, then then you're either extremely disappointed in Travion Henderson to this point, which would be extremely bad sign for Travion Henderson, or you're not into Ramondre or something like. So if you're not happy with your running back situation, then it's kind of like, then you effed up in the draft process with, Travion Henderson.
Well, I saw some like Jerome Ford, comments, or like Keaton Mitchell. And it's like, okay, I can see that, especially if Stevenson might be out for multiple weeks, just trying to get somebody in the door for a 6th round pick that you think could potentially help out. Like Ford, a guy who's experienced in pass protection and being a 3rd down back, like that stuff did make sense. It still wouldn't have been a good sign for Travion Henderson in any right. And you could argue last week's usage for Terrell Jennings was also not a good sign for Travion Henderson's value either. It doesn't make sense to me. Every time Travion touches the ball, it seems like he makes something out of nothing. And I just don't understand how many more times he has to like rip off 5-6 yard carries before they start giving him the ball. But that's another topic for another show.
Yeah, I think people who listen to this show on a regular basis know how we feel about Travion Henderson and just the insanity that surrounds that situation and why they don't use him more. I still think by the end of the year, they're going to come to their senses. I think they're going to be forced to, especially if this Ramondre injury lingers, because it could. So according to the Jet Press on Twitter, I just put this in our private chat. Apparently it came down to the Jets wanted a third and the Chiefs offered a 4th round pick. So I think I'm coming around to your side that
That's
the Chiefs
low
just should,
for Breece Hall.
the Chiefs just should have gave the 3rd round pick and made us all happy. Like, why don't they just care about Dynasty, Matt? Come on. I mean, the Chiefs could have made me so happy today if they just would have given them a 3rd round pick.
Well, we're talking about like pick 100.
Yeah.
For a potential for an asset that could help you win a Super Bowl. Like, what is it with the Chiefs? So the Patriots can't draft receivers, and the Chiefs don't know what the hell to do at the running back position because they have to watch Jonathan Taylor run for 3 touchdowns every week and think to ourselves, man, remember when we took Clyde Edwards-Helaire? And now they watched Breece Hall and said, nah, we're good. We'll give Kareem Hunt 15 carries a game.
I don't get it.
Come on. And we liked Pacheco, but like more as a factor of opportunity. You know, he's not the most talented rusher out there, but he was making it work. And, you know, they could have had an electric asset. But like I said, as a Mahomes and Chiefs hater, I am A-okay with the result. As a fantasy owner of Breece Hall, I am upset.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. So let's move on to a situation that I find utterly hilarious, and that's the Miami Dolphins. So Jaylen Waddle stays in Miami, not traded. There was some speculation and rumor that he would be, but Jaylen Waddle, unlike these other players, Jaylen Waddle's under contract and through 2028. He has a big dead cap hit number next year, but it kind of tails off in 2027. So Jaylen Waddle, he's signed through. I just exited out. I should have. Why did I do that? I don't know why. So he signed. I just said through 2028. I didn't realize this, Matt. But Tyreek Hill still has another year on his contract through 2026 and has a $28.2 million dead cap hit next year. So presumably we're going to get Tyreek Hill again next year, or at least he's under contract. And then Tua, I don't know how the Dolphins get out of the Tua deal. I don't know why I went down the rabbit hole of contracts, but it matters for us in Dynasty. I still think Jaylen Waddle for now, it's one of these players that I don't really have a strong opinion on. You know, he's sandwiched in between Devonta Smith and Travis Hunter. I'll tell you this right now. If somebody offered me Jaylen Waddle for Travis Hunter, I would take Travis Hunter because, man, and we're going to get to Travis Hunter here in a minute. It really felt like Travis Hunter was about ready to break out. And then this injury, like when I got the notification that Travis Hunter was going to go to IR, I audibly in my car went like, what the, like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. After the game against the Rams, just ridiculous. And I still think we're going to get some good things from Travis Hunter, and we'll talk about the Jags here in a minute. But like Jaylen Waddle, I think is a hold. You know, I don't think he's going to give you much in the short term. The Dolphins do have a good fantasy playoff schedule, so there is that. But what are your thoughts here on Jaylen Waddle? Like I said, on Keep Trade Cut, he is player 61, wide receiver 21, ranked just above Travis Hunter.
I mean, I'm actually kind of fine with it. You know, he's actually having his best season since 2022 thus far this year. And yeah, it's in part due to the Tyreek Hill injury, which is forcing a lot of targets his way and the team being so bad that they're, you know, always playing from behind. But hey, you know, as long as Tua doesn't get benched, I think Waddle has a lot of value there as a play. But that's the big issue is I don't see Tua making it through this season. The problem is they have no one behind him, but it's just the politics of NFL football. We rarely see a team that goes through this much struggle without trying to make some sort of change at the quarterback position. So I think Skylar Thompson is the one behind him. If I'm remembering correctly, I think it's Skylar Thompson and Mike White. Mike White maybe could do something. So I almost think Waddle might be a sell. Just if you think, you know, if you think Tua is going to get benched right now, he has the numbers to go along with it. He's got at least 8 targets in 3 of the last 5 games. He has at least 6 targets in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the last 8 games, 7 of 9 games total. And in some of his last games, if we go from week 2 onward, 18 points, 15 points. I have some inflated scoring, so this isn't exact, but roughly 30 points. He had 110 yards and a touchdown with 6 receptions against Carolina. 16 points, 23 points, 99 yards and a touchdown, 5 receptions against Atlanta, and then 14 points last week. Those are good game logs. And like you said, he does have a good schedule coming up. So it's really tough. It's really just a game of whether or not you think you think Tua gets benched, but I don't think the situation gets necessarily like a lot better for Waddle down the stretch. So I lean sell just because I don't think you're going to find yourself in a situation where you get horrifically burned by some sort of change of events, even, 1 to 2 years down the line.
Yeah. And I'll just say that, I mean, looking at Tua's contract, he's going to be there next year unless the Dolphins just cut him and do a rebuild. And you would have thought that they would have traded some more pieces if that was the plan going forward, because he has a $99 million dead cap hit next year. So he's going to be on the team most likely, and he's going to be the starting quarterback. So, I'm not saying it's the best asset to have in the world, but, Tua is probably a cheap quarterback that's going to be a starter somewhere next year, most likely Miami, for whoever's coaching the team. I don't know if it's Mike McDaniel. We were joking before the show that Mike McDaniel is just crossing his fingers and just hoping and praying, please fire me. Please fire me. I want to go call plays somewhere else. I don't want to be here anymore because of all these, the terrible contracts. I mean, there's no question why that they mutually parted ways with their GM, but I digress. I think you made some good points there. Let's get into the players who were actually traded finally halfway through the show. Rashid Shaheed to the Seahawks. This was, I think, a pretty interesting, savvy move for the Seahawks. I think it does signal that potentially Cooper Kupp is going to be out, dealing with an injury maybe a little bit longer than we think, maybe not. Rashid Shaheed also does have familiarity with Clint Kubiak, who called plays for the Saints last year. So there is that, and I think he's going to fit pretty well within this system. He is an unrestricted free agent in 2026. So, Matt, what were your thoughts when you saw this come across the wire? Do you think that this is a good fit? Do you think he's a buy? Do you think his price should go up in Dynasty? What are your thoughts here?
Everyone knows I'm one of the biggest Rashid Shaheed fans in the fantasy football space. I have to be. I'm pretty sure I have to be. He has been one of my favorite wide receiver looks throughout the offseason going into this season. Yes, he was 27. We had some, age-related talks there, but in terms of what he was able to do last year, and even though it was short and cut off by injury, was certainly a breakout season for Rashid Shaheed. He comes into this season and continues that with an awful passing game, putting up some good fantasy numbers, clearly showing his big playability in that game. I think it was against the Giants where he had that long touchdown. And now he goes to a team where not only are they a much better passing game, a much better offense, probably more targets going to him, maybe the same amount of targets, to be honest, if Cooper Kupp is able to, be usable if healthy, but definitely more quality targets, more quality downfield looks. We saw what Jordan Addison was able to do in a similar role in Minnesota with Darnold last year. And really overall, he fits also directly into this offense. Like, it's such a big boost for them to be able to have that deep downfield threat of Shaheed. So I really love the NFL fit. And because of that, I think he's going to get at least the same fantasy usage and a much better offense. And I think that in and of itself is worth another buy here. His value is still really low. He's obviously more of a win now asset with his age. He's hit his age apex, but you now have a more stable offense and more high-powered offense. And with that usage, you're going to get a lot of good fantasy weeks.
I completely agree. When I saw this, I thought the Dynasty community is not going to react fast enough to this. I mean, or they're not going to raise them up at all thinking, oh, well, JSN's there. JSN is a similar type player to Chris Olave. I mean, the target share is going to be the same, blah, blah, blah. I don't understand. It's hard for me to understand what Rashid Shaheed is going to have to do to get a little bit of respect because, he's 14th in targets amongst wide receivers right now. And we saw Torrey Horton catch 2 touchdown passes against the Commanders. I don't think this hurts JSN at all. I think this hurts the ancillary pieces like Cooper Kupp, Torrey Horton, the tight end, AJ Barner. I think it hurts those pieces more than it would hurt JSN because we know JSN's awesome. I think this is really good for Rashid Shaheed because Sam Darnold is playing out of his mind. This offense has been really one of the hidden gems in fantasy football this year, aside from the stupid running back situation, which we've talked about ad nauseum, how much we despise Zach Charbonnet, or really how much you despise Zach Charbonnet. I don't like him, but Matt Babish has a whole nother level of hate in his heart for Zach Charbonnet, but I digress. I think that I will be buying Rashid Shaheed because even though he's an unrestricted free agent, I don't think that this is going to be a contract that costs them a hell of a lot. I think that there would be some mutual interest in extending him, especially considering the familiarity with Clint Kubiak. And I like this. I really do like this. I think he fits well in this offense. So I'm buying this. And just some brief questions. We kind of touched on, I don't think that this affects JSN at all. Would you agree with that or would you disagree?
I would agree. Yep.
Okay. And then my second question, what do you think this means for Chris Olave and the Saints going forward? They have Brandon Cooks there. They have Devon Vele there, Juwan Johnson. You would think, my take on it would be Chris Olave, if you go to fantasy points data, and I don't have it pulled up right this second, I can get to it, but he's one of the leaders. I think he was right below Jamar Chase in expected fantasy points per game because of all the targets that he's getting in the offense. It's because the Saints suck. They're playing from behind pretty much every quarter, right? So they're going to have to throw the ball, and all those targets are going to Chris Olave. Chris Olave is going to have useful weeks in fantasy going forward, and he's still one of my top buys, like in redraft. But for Dynasty, the Saints are just such a hard situation to figure out. That, with that being said, at player 66 overall, ranked right next to Sam Darnold and AJ Brown, and Aronde Gadsden has just flown up the Keep Trade Cut rankings. At that price, I mean, that's still maybe a little bit expensive for me. I suppose I'm holding him there, but I wouldn't be opposed to buying Chris Olave if the price is right. I think that this frees him up to get even more targets, and I think the sneakier option here is Juwan Johnson. I think Juwan Johnson could see a lot more targets now that Rashid Shaheed's gone. So what's your assessment of the other pieces there? How does this affect Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd actually be open to selling Chris Olave because of the Tyler Shuck factor, for one. Had his lowest number of targets by far this season with 4 against the Rams. Only 3 receptions, 57 yards, which is nice, but he's already struggled to find the end zone, as has everybody for New Orleans. And now you take away a piece that is very important to this passing game in Rashid Shaheed, where who is left to really take the top off the defense and keep the defense honest and take some coverage away from Olave, because the way Shaheed was being used was, we'll get him quick hitters over the middle of the field. We'll get him, the deeper digs. We'll even, run him out deep with the go routes or the deep posts and really, keeping the defense honest that way. If there's no one left to do that and defenses can shift a heavier attention to Olave more often, these 3 for 57 games, these 8-point fantasy games are going to be a lot more common. And I think it's the exact same situation as Waddle, where I don't think if you're a contender, you're going to find yourself in a situation where even if you're a rebuilding team, honestly, with Olave being 25 years old and this team going to be bad for multiple years, I don't find a situation where you're going to get massively burned. You may hit a spot where you're like, oh, Olave's playing well. I don't think I should have traded him. But if you pick your spots right in terms of a trade, I think that's going to work out for you more often than not. His schedule coming up too isn't the best. Carolina, Atlanta, Miami, Tampa, Carolina, New York Jets through week 16 of the season. So it's not like he has this great schedule that you could potentially benefit from a contender, from a win now perspective. And I like what you mentioned about Juwan Johnson. Crazy enough, rookie Tyler Shuck and 6-year veteran Juwan Johnson were teammates at Oregon in college. And Juwan Johnson caught his first touchdown pass in the NFL. So there are a lot to be, for a player that's cheap and potentially even on waiver wires as of last week. There's potential there in Juwan Johnson, and because of how cheap he is, he's an obvious, interest piece with the fallout here. But Chris Olave, I kind of lean towards sell.
Yeah, I think I should probably rephrase. I think for the long term, like if you're a contender, I don't think Chris Olave is the piece that you want to go after. I would much rather prefer somebody like Devontae Adams or somebody like that that's going to be cheaper and is going to be more useful to you right now. I think if you're playing the long game, I think Chris Olave could be one of these pieces that you could potentially buy low on right now. I do think keep trade cut. I don't think that that's necessarily where a lot of people would value Chris Olave. I could be wrong, but I mean, player 66 overall. I mean,
he's probably not that high in the average evaluation.
I would put him closer to where Xavier Worthy is right now, like down a few spots. So I'm coming at it with that in mind. But like I said, I would be interested in buying if the price is right. But I think Olave is kind of like Garrett Wilson or kind of like Breece Hall, just kind of trapped in this terrible situation where if they're ever freed and to go to be in a good offense, then look out. But man, it's he's getting a lot of targets. I just don't know how many of them are catchable, which is why the expected fantasy points number is high. He's number 5 according to Fantasy Points data, minimum 50 targets. The number 1 is Jamar Chase. Number 2, Devontae Adams, Drake London, CeeDee Lamb. Who CeeDee Lamb's 7th game isn't in there yet, but anyway, Rashee Rice is also pretty high on that list too at number 8, right behind JSN, who's ranked a lot higher on keep trade cut. Anyway, let's move to another player who was traded. Jakobi Meyers, and he's traded to the Jaguars. Jakobi Meyers is another player who is an unrestricted free agent in 2026. And I'm not going to lie, that as soon as this trade came across the wire, the first thought that I had was, oh, the BTJ injury must be a lot worse than we think. But everything I'm seeing on Twitter, at least that I can see, is, he has a chance to play this week, which means I don't really think he has a chance to play this week. So what are your thoughts on this one? This was kind of a head scratcher to me. I like Jakobi Meyers, but this seems like a short-term fix to what could be a long-term problem. BTJ has been a weird player this year, and I think Travis Hunter is the future number 1 wide receiver in this offense. And I don't think that comes as a shock to anybody who listens to this show. And I think we were seeing the breakout right before our eyes in that Rams game. Like, it was coming. Travis Hunter was dynamic, and that's the kind of upside that he has. And so I just, what do you think of this one? Because this one is weird to me. But
this is Travis Hunter is out for the season.
Okay.
This is Travis Hunter is probably out at least the end of the regular season, and they're in a playoff position right now, potential to make the playoffs and make some noise in Liam Cohen's first year. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, right? I think I would rather have, I'm actually not exactly sure what the return was between Meyers or Shaheed.
I think of a 5th and I can look it up as we're talking, but it wasn't like anything crazy.
Yeah, I would essentially just rather have taken whichever 2 was cheaper. But Meyers in that slot role, and that's what really this is all about, right? Is filling the void of that slot role in the Liam Cohen offense and giving Trevor Lawrence some more firepower to hopefully bolster this. And while I don't know if I necessarily agree with it from a football perspective in terms of giving up that capital, but hey, look, you're here, you're overperforming expectations. You have, ETN on a contract year. You have been putting up a lot of stinkers in terms of your seasons. You have a new head coach, a new regime. You have the opportunity to really put a stamp on things and compete with the Colts for the division, make a playoff spot, make some noise in year one of the new regime. I get it. I get why they wanted to stay competitive. Now, if Hunter comes back, after like 5 games, a short IR stint, then I don't necessarily understand this. It makes a lot less sense if that's the case. Although, having Jakobi Meyers as your team's wide receiver 3, not necessarily a bad spot to be in. It's not a bad thing to have too much wide receiver depth. So we'll see how it plays out from a fantasy perspective. Obviously, I really like Meyers. I like him as a buy option right now in this offense. For Jack Besh and the people kind of in the Raiders spot, you certainly hope that this will lead to more opportunity for Besh. It's been hard for him to see the field. Doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of Tyler Lockett was signed by the Raiders and outsnapped Besh, which is just a really bad look organizationally. They haven't even really given the kid a chance to make anything of himself yet. So hopefully this opens up more opportunity for him. And then, Brock Bowers I don't think it necessarily changes a lot just with the way they use him. I don't think the absence of Jakobi Meyers is going to hurt Bowers. Like I think, Shaheed leaving might hurt Olave. So I don't think this impacts him too much. And, back on the Jacksonville side, Brian Thomas Jr., I don't think it obviously negatively impacts him just from a perspective of not getting as much targets thrown his way potentially, but a net neutral really from where we were a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I think it puts a real damper on anybody who is holding out hope for Parker Washington,
Yeah, 100%.
That kind of sucks if you had him or were hoping to flip him
100%.
to somebody. I think it's good overall for Jack Besh, although I think it's really good for Trey Tucker. I think Trey Tucker's really talented and has a lot of upside there. So I can't imagine that the Raiders will plan on this being their wide receiver room going into 2026, but I think Trey Tucker is actually a really good player, and I would be looking to add him as a throw in to a deal I didn't think was quite fair. If I could get Trey Tucker thrown in there, why not? If I have the roster space, it was a 4th and a 6th round pick for Jakobi Meyers, by the way. So again, nothing crazy. And again, if the Chiefs, if they could give up that for Meyers, why can't the Chiefs give up a 3rd round pick for Breece Hall? Anyway, not to harp on that again, but. Yes. So I thought, and honestly, the more I think about it, if their long-term plan is to have BTJ and Travis Hunter and Jakobi Meyers as the wide receivers there, 1, 2, and 3, that's really good wide receiver room. So, and schematically, I think it could work. I wonder I had this thought real briefly, and I just want to say this real quickly before we move on. I thought when they made this trade, the first thought that came to my mind, and I know it's wrong, probably, but I thought, I wonder what the chances of them trading BTJ today would be. If they traded for Jakobi Meyers, because those rumors were out there, like BTJ was potentially, they were taking calls on him or he would be available for a trade. I'm sure the asking price would be astronomical, but some players are just not great schematic fits for certain styles of play. And who knows what's going on with BTJ this year. I don't know if the wrist is a problem, but he's dropped a lot of passes and he's clearly not playing as well as he was playing last year. So that thought did cross my mind, but obviously he didn't get traded. And I do wonder what it means for his long-term outlook. Like if they do sign Jakobi Meyers, and obviously they invested a lot in Travis Hunter. I know he plays both ways, but I don't know. Some part of me thinks all 3 of those players together would be great. And the other part of me thinks, well, BTJ's been really bad in this offense this year. So I wonder what the plan is going forward. You know what I mean? So I think it's a very interesting situation that we'll need to keep our eye on. And the last thing I do want to mention, Adonai Mitchell was in that Jets deal. They get Adonai Mitchell. And I just want to ask the question because I have my answer. I want to hear what your answer is. Is there any upside in acquiring Adonai Mitchell, or is it worth our time talking about it? Or what do you think?
I mean, if you're in extremely deep leagues where guys like that are, well, I guess Adonai Mitchell isn't that deep of a stash at this point. I think he's worth a pickup if you have some empty roster spots. I don't think you're cutting anyone too valuable yet, or sending a 4th round pick for a trade or anything like that. But you definitely want to keep an eye on it. If you have free room, take a stab at it, see what happens. Not a lot of harm there, but don't go, cutting anybody valuable or anything like that just yet.
Yeah, and just for the record, I probably would be holding Jakobi Meyers. I'm just not really sure what the long-term plan is there. And also Rap Sheet, I meant to say, said that the Travis Hunter injury isn't expected to be long-term, but I do think that there is some credence to your theory that maybe Travis Hunter's injury is a little bit worse than we thought. I thought it was that way for BTJ, who suffered a high ankle sprain. So either one of them could miss more time than we think. But Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver 79, 213th overall. He is valued at a 2026 mid-3rd round pick. So I do think he's worth adding if, like I said, similarly to Trey Tucker, if you can get him thrown at a deal. Interestingly enough, he's valued over Parker Washington and Darnell Mooney. Anyway, just kind of interesting. And he's valued over Juwan Johnson. So maybe I would sell him for Juwan Johnson right now. I would do that actually if I had Adonai Mitchell. But anyway, I think that there is some upside for Adonai, but unlikely to hit at this point, especially changing teams. I don't think history is on his side. But I think that does it. I think we got through all the major storylines. Mr. Babich, any final thoughts here? Any words of wisdom for the people before we end the program tonight?
You know what, Seth, this week I don't think I have anything besides to follow us on our socials. You can follow the show on Twitter at FF Dynasty Table. You can follow me on Twitter at Babich_Matt10, Seth at Seth_Dwold, DIEWOLD. Click like and subscribe on the video if you enjoy our content, and come back for more.
We'll have more trade videos getting you ready for your trade deadlines. We have a Dynasty Stashes episode in the works and on our schedule to do. So you're definitely going to want to be tapped in to the channel if you like Dynasty. We were just monetized a couple weeks ago. So very, very thank you. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Thank you so much for subscribing. If you've already subscribed, if you've liked our videos, means a lot to us, helps us out in the algorithm. So any support like that is much appreciated. And until next time, also comment below. Let us know what you think. If you disagree with us, we'll hear it out. We'll respond to you. I try to get to every single comment. Matt Babich is also responding to those comments as well. So let us know what you think of our assessment of the NFL trade deadline. It started with a bang, ended with a whimper. Breece Hall did not get traded. It is what it is. It's unfortunate, but let us know what you think. Nobody cares about Aaron Rodgers. And until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.